Blog Talk Radio.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I am Egberto Willies, your host. As usual, thank you very much for spending some time with me, spending some time with the coffee party in our quest to make this a true democracy. It was a rather, how should I say it? This week was pretty bad. It was a pretty bad week for the democracy. However, it was a pretty good week for those who finally saw in action that we are at the beginning of a moral society that will begin to see health care for all as a right. That's not the subject of the program today at all, but I just had to put that in there. It wasn't all negative this week. We did get some positive. However, the Supreme Court removed the aggregate limit of dollars that any one person can spend in any election cycle. Only around 646 people in the entire nation reached that limit in the 2011-2012 election cycle. In other words, the Supreme Court ruled that those 646 people's right of free speech was somehow denied. This makes the smoking out of wealthy donors that are corrupting the body politic that much more important. Senator Harry Reid this week has begun the process by calling out the Koch brothers on the floor of the Senate. That seemed to have hurt Charles Koch's feelings. So what did he do? He penned an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. Of all the newspapers, he chose the Wall Street Journal to pen an op-ed of someone criticizing the evil that he has perpetrated against or is perpetrating against the body politic with the constant lies to Americans in order to have them vote against their own interests. That's what he did. Anyhow, I want to talk about the Koch brothers, and I want to talk about anything that you think we should do with regards to the wealthy, not all the wealthy, but the wealthy whose intent is to move us back into feudalism, to move us back into some sort of indentured servitude. I want to hear what you have to say, so give me a call. The number is 646-929-2495. Again, that number is 646-929-2495. For first-time listeners, this is an easygoing show. We listen to every point of view. Everybody has value. Everybody, no matter what part of the political spectrum you're at, or you're in, we want to hear from you. Because whether you agree with what I am saying, whether you agree with any of our regular guests, that's not the important thing. The important thing is some sort of a dialogue. Before I get started, I want to give a shout-out to a website that actually promoted some parts of the show as well, liberalamerica.org. Don't forget to visit them. They're doing quite a bit in getting messages out there to ensure, again, that Americans have a voice and that, in fact, we are the media. This week, the post that I am dropping at Daily Coast, I think, comes out on Sunday at 12:30. It's also about this particular subject, the Koch brothers. And I kind of played around with the title. I called it Charles Koch's Lament as the Harry Reid Pia Pushback Begins. And here goes it, and I would love to hear from you guys again. The number is 646-929-2495. Here it goes. The Koch brothers exert a web of influence over the government. These groups, like Americans for Prosperity, saturate the airwaves with lies and misleading ads. That's my first paragraph. However, I want you to know, folks, that everything in these blog posts are corroborated, so I present you with links for you to verify the information as well. Continuing. The liberal blogosphere has been pushing back very hard on the Koch brothers. For the most part, the traditional media has ignored their corrosive influence on the body politic. That seemed like a status quo the Koch brothers were very happy to live with. How would one force out a rat that is comfortably hidden in plain view? You ensure that an overwhelmingly bright light is shined on it for all to see. That is what Senator Harry Reid did a few weeks ago and a few days ago. He slammed the Koch brothers on the Senate floor. And the media, the mainstream, not the mainstream, the traditional media was forced to take a look. Senator Reid is a smart man. Harry Reid knows that the Koch brothers are unknown to most Americans. He knew that he needed to elevate the story. He also needed to use the power of his office and position to buttress all of the left-wing blogosphere that had already called out the web of companies doing the Koch brothers' dirty work. Success arrived. Charles Koch just could not take it anymore. He wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, presumptuously titled, Charles Koch, I am fighting to restore a free society. Anyone in the know likely lost their composure after reading the op-ed. After reading, I was compelled to write the following, and I wrote this in another blog, and I quoted it in the Daily Coast piece, and it goes as follows. After reading the piece, one wonders if Charles Koch is living in the reality-based world. One wonders if he has begun to believe the lies that his several funded PACs put out to deceive the American population. In that light, here are a few glaring statements that should be rebutted. Koch says, the central belief and fatal conceit of the current administration is that you are incapable of running your own life, but those in power are capable of running it for you. This is the essence of big government and, here comes his word, collectivism. Collectivists who stand for government control of the means of production and how people live their lives promise heaven but deliver hell. For them, the promise end justifies the means, according to Koch. This is an interesting attack on the Obama administration. While he correctly defines collectivism, there is no instance in which the Obama administration has entered the realm of means of production. What the administration did as a continuation of the Bush administration is use taxpayer resources to save the plutocracy. The Obama administration ensured that those who almost destroyed the world's economy were able to maintain their position and status. The administration ensured that major corporations like GM did not fail. Their analysis was to tolerate some malfeasance for the better good of the status quo economy. Had the administration done the absolute right thing, it would have allowed the market to penalize those that destroyed it. At that point, the recovery would have been benign collectivism brought on by the failure of a failed plutocratic regime. And going back to the Daily Kos blog post, Charles Koch shows that no amount of money can elicit a cohesive message when one's message is demonstratively anathema to the vast majority of Americans. He is against the minimum wage. He is anti-regulation. He is anti-Obamacare. He implies each of those tenets is anti-freedom. Ironically, it is fact that if you make more, you have more. It is fact that absent regulations, corporations, including his own, pollute the environment and are unfair to employees for profit maximization. It is fact that millions of Americans are better off with the security, financial, and health-wise provided by Obamacare. No amount of Charles Koch bloviating will change that. Harry Reid is defining the Koch brothers as he should. Why did Michael Koch allow Harry Reid to force him out in the open? He understands politics. Harry Reid is in the process of defining the Koch brothers, all the Americans who know nothing about him, nothing about them, let alone their perpetrated evil. Unfortunately for Michael Koch's lament and rebuttal in the Wall Street Journal, it will become the framing document by which he will be justifiably caricatured. The Koch brothers better be careful. There are already organizations working on identifying their companies and boycotting them. The continued success of their empire may be inversely proportional to the new notoriety that Harry Reid will continue to give him. Folks, give me a call. Telephone number 646-929-2495. Tell me what you think. And yours and truly, my friend, John, talk to me.
Yeah, it was a brilliant essay on the Koch brothers. Good afternoon, Egberto. I enjoyed your first show. Good. I really enjoyed your first show on KPFT last Monday, and I encourage everyone to listen to the podcast of that show. And I'm also looking forward to your show on Monday night at 9 p.m. Central on KPFT.
Thank you, my brother. I appreciate the plug right there. In fact, we already have 3 guests lined up for that show on Monday. I think folks are going to love it. We're going to be actually discussing the Supreme Court case, and we'll have some protesters who were from Move to Amend that were on the streets talking to ABC and a few other of the stations out here. So it should be a great show as well. But talk to me, my brother. Let me hear about the Koch brothers.
Yeah, I'm going to quote from the third paragraph, first sentence, Charles Koch, I'm fighting to restore a free society. So here he goes, he says, a truly free society is based on a vision of respect for people and what they value, and a truly free society is any business that disrespects its customers will fail and deserves to do so. So my reaction to those words of wisdom from Charles Koch is boycott Koch Industries, Georgia Pacific Products, which include Angel Soft, toilet paper, Brawny paper towels, Quilted Northern toilet paper, Soft and Gentle toilet paper, Dixie plates, bowls, napkins, and cups, Koch Industry gasoline, Chevron, Union 76, and Conoco, and Koch Industries Intavista products like Stainmaster carpet. So I've been boycotting them for years, and I will continue to do so, and I hope people join in to that boycott. I think it's what they want to do is create a society where it's basically, income inequality is already so bad, and they just want to exacerbate it even more. I also want to read a part that says the central belief in fatal conceit of the current administration, this is, you read a little bit from that too,
right,
is that you are incapable of running your own life, but those in power are capable of running it for you. This is the essence of big government and collectivism. Now, I have my take on that is Charles Koch seems to think that there's a disconnect from those in power, in bunny quotes, and people who put them in power. In a true democracy, those in power should reflect the will of the people. Yet 80% of those opposed to Citizens United ruling, and it still stands. And I know you're fighting very hard to get that overturned. 73% of the people want an increase in the minimum wage, but that's not happening. And why isn't it happening? But because plutocrats like Charles Koch don't want it to happen, and they're willing to spend hundreds of millions of dollars. They spent $412 million in the 2012 election to influence low-information voters to vote against their will. And I also want to quote from here. It says, instead of encouraging free and open debate, collectivists thrive to discredit and intimidate opponents. They engage in character assassination. Well, Charles Koch, where are you in the debate? Let's see you debate Rachel Maddow. Let's see you debate Chris Hayes. Let's see you debate George Soros or Jonathan Soros or Paul Krugman or Robert Reich or Joseph Stiglitz. Let's see you debate those people. Where are you? You've decided to come out of the open. The rat analogy was a little bit unexpected, but I mean, now that you're out in the open, come on, let's have this debate. Let's do it. I mean, it's just so. Go ahead.
It was ironic because all the things that he was accusing the quote unquote collectivists about doing are the things that he is doing. In other words, what? And I made sure and I gave the examples in the actual piece that I wrote because I wanted to let folks understand the following. He talks about freedom and choice, yet when he was attempting to have Americans not make the choice of accepting health care reform, he did it by actually lying to Americans, not just misinforming Americans. He did it by funding groups that systematically lied to Americans, and in systematically lying to Americans, have them entirely make up their minds on a false pretense. How is that somehow freedom? And then when he makes the accusation within his piece, I think what he says is, this is what collectivists do. They try to discredit you. Of course you discredit. I mean, it's not like the Koch brothers are all that difficult to discredit. I mean, it is one of the simplest things to do. They pollute, yet they cite approximately all the awards that their different divisions have received. It's amazing how they cloak. In a piece, you'll see that there's a link to a website that has all the federal government's information as to what pollution they're responsible for, what citations they were given, etc. So it is important that piece of document was surely not written for the knowledgeable folks that they expect to be knowledgeable. It's evident it was written to keep their base shored up, because anybody who read the first paragraph. In fact, anybody who read the title of the Koch brother op-ed, the first thing that they would have to say is conceit. Who are you to be the one determining what the vision of America is supposed to be? Because that's what he says. He says, my vision for America. Well, I have a vision for America, but who would I be to say my vision for America is this? I wrote a book in which I said, I think we should consider an America where we have the corporation, the individual, and the corporation, the individual, and the government play their respective parts with a bias towards the individual. That is what there is no conceit there because it was given towards the individual. Everybody their own freedom. But evidently he doesn't feel that way. Stay with me, John. I have 412. 412, who do I have the honor of speaking with?
Hi, Alberto. It's Greg Russack in Pittsburgh. How are you?
Talk to me, Greg. How are you doing, my brother?
I just want to tell John I would pay money to see any of the Koch brothers debate Robert Reich. That would be a dream debate as far as I'm concerned. I think that's an excellent idea. I also thought I would share with you that I just came across this today, and I posted the link in the chat room. There's some research that's been done at a TED Talk that was turned into this by a social psychologist by the name of Paul Piff, last name Piff. He gives a TED Talk about some work that was done at the University of California, Berkeley, in which they were observing just regular people in situations that would give one party an edge over the other. And part of this study included two total strangers, just by virtue of the roll of the dice, who would play Monopoly, one at a great advantage and the other not so much. And what they determined, and it's a much more involved study than that, but it's a good example of what I think is really the psychosis at work in the minds of people like the Koch brothers, like Sheldon Adelson, is that it stopped being about money a long time ago for these guys. It's a psychosis that they suffer from that is really about just meanness, and that's what this TED Talk is actually titled: is Does Money Make You Mean? And it talks about the entitlement that the wealthy and the privileged actually have in their heads, and that they feel that society owes them. There were studies that they did about people at a crosswalk in California where the law says you must stop, and that they measured the kinds of vehicles that actually obeyed that law and the ones that didn't. And it should come as no surprise that those vehicles that are in the most expensive class were the least likely to actually stop and obey the law. I think we can see these kinds of things in our day-to-day lives all the time. It just so happens that yesterday I almost got hit in a crosswalk myself in Pittsburgh by a woman driving a high-class Audi. I'm not saying that everybody does that. That's not at all what this guy is saying either. But what I seem to see a lot of in society today, and it seems more and more prevalent all the time with the great polarization that exists, is that those people of wealth and privilege and the people who support them and maybe even still maintain a dream of someday achieving that same status are actually the ones who feel the most entitled and act like it in our society. It's not the poor who crash the economy. It's not the poor who are looking for opportunity. It's the wealthy who keep us down, who keep the middle class fighting against each other all the time. And it's because they feel they've got it coming to them. They actually have now, and the Koch brothers are a perfect example of this, they inherited that wealth and power. They didn't build that. I love using that line, by the way. They didn't build that. They didn't build that. They inherited that. And I think until we actually have, and the Atlantic had a great article on this as well. I'll get the link and put it in the chat room. The Atlantic had a great article on this. The Atlantic article was about the lack of attention being paid by the media to the wealthy and powerful, and not holding them to account for their ideologies, for their beliefs. It's easy to pick on the politicians as public figures, but what the media is not doing is they're not actually holding the people with real power accountable. And that's the Koch brothers. That's George Soros. That's Sheldon Adelson. The media does not put those people under the kind of microscope that they should. They do not scrutinize them so that Americans can understand exactly what the ideology is that's driving our political process and our politicians today with all the money that's being infused, and McCutcheon has only made it worse. And yet there are people who think that this is a First Amendment issue. That's ridiculous. It's crazy. It's completely
Well, Greg, that is the whole idea, and I like what you spoke about when you said there are those that are supporting that 1% group, and I'm not talking about. And folks, I want to clarify something. When I'm talking about the 1% in a negative manner, it's about the bad ones. There are very good 1%ers like Bill Gates. Even though I have some issues with Bill Gates recently on vouchers and. Right, on education. I have some problems with him there. But he's a good man. Buffett's a good man. They're very good. Nick Hauser is a very good man. He's the guy who came out and said, folks, the people who built it, it was the middle class that built it. It was the working poor that built it. Absent these guys, the wealthy guys have there's no wealthy guy. Now, I love also, I think you were mentioning earlier about those people who feel entitled. And I'm glad you mentioned something important about the Koch brothers. They were born into wealth. And in fact, it's amazing because, as I recall, their father did a whole lot of business in Russia. Either their father, I think it was their father. John, you may be able to corroborate that, whether they had some very... some vast businesses in Russia. Do you remember that at all? Or?
Yeah. I mean, their father did business with Stalin, and basically that's how he got most of his money.
That's right.
And what is interesting about that is while we had attacks on, let's say, the president on his relations with, let's say, other countries, or whether he's even an American, it is amazing that those same people didn't find to make some sort of a corroborating statement about or similar statement about their relationship with Stalin or anything of that sort. Not that it was relevant, but I'm just trying to show how it actually works. Now, yes, they do feel entitled. They believe that for some, and I think one of the things that we have to do, Greg, and I think you're already doing it, John, all of us are doing it in our own way, is as we become the media to keep this thing going. One of the things that I'm hoping to do at KPFT with the new show Politics Done Right on KPFT is to promote stories that don't necessarily get the treatment that they should be getting in the real in the traditional media, and I hope you guys also would keep me to task on that sort of a thing and contribute on that sort of thing, like how you're contributing with this TED Talk, Greg, so that we can actually get that information out. We can no longer sit back and just complain and say, well, the traditional ABC didn't cover this, CBS didn't cover that. We don't need them to cover that anymore. We can completely delegitimize these guys as they deserve to be delegitimized now and form our own ring, which is going just fine right now. I'm starting to see some growth in the way we are getting information and the way we are able to promote information and get the kind of viewership that these guys are going to be losing constantly. What say you, John? Yeah,
I mean, I agree with you. I disagree with you a little bit about traditional media. I think traditional media still has an incredible influence. I mean, yeah, I'd like to see it diminished also, and it is being diminished because more people are watching cable and more people are going on the internet all the time with the advent of smartphones. But they still have an incredible impact, and I think they should still be scrutinized consistently. And you do that very well. I mean, that's one thing, you're able to put up your own videos and edit your own videos. And in fact, I think you do it as well as anybody on the web. You got Media Matters, you got Crooks and Liars. So, I mean, you can get an idea of what's going on in mainstream media without necessarily spending time watching it. And
right.
So, I mean, I think it is good to know about it. As far as the Charles Koch essay, I'd also like to talk about how he uses all these words that are ambiguous, like freedom and liberty. And I've talked about this before. I mean, now with a lot of millions of people have the freedom not going bankrupt, from having a health problem that causes their bankruptcy because they're able to sign up in the ACA or now that they have Medicaid. People have the liberty, and he talks about freedom. He talks about liberty all the time. I mean, these are words with great ambiguity that really don't mean anything. I mean, it's just these are words that grab people's attention, but they really don't mean anything.
John,
they mean something different to different people, rather.
John, I would like to personalize something that you said there because I don't think people understand how important that statement is that you mentioned. You mentioned about Obamacare giving people the freedom. I can tell you as a small business owner, one of my biggest dilemmas when going solo, when starting the business, was what about health insurance? And I can tell you that my wife stayed home with my daughter, but the only reason we were able to do that is that her employer, which I have to say was a good employer, allowed her to sit home a year on paying for the health insurance ourselves, the company's health insurance ourselves, but to decide if she was going to be able to stay home and if I was going to be able to go ahead and eventually get private insurance. Somebody today somebody with great ideas today, attempting to start their own company. Before Obamacare, they had to think twice. Do I take the risk of going without insurance? Because likely if I'm 30, 35 years old and I had a headache, it's a pre-existing condition, and they'll either charge me an arm and a leg or they will keep me uninsured, or they'll tell me anything that happens to your head is uninsured, but every other part of your body is. I mean, it's some crazy things that you see in that. I remember going to one particular policy and getting them saying, we'll insure every part of you except your spine, because when you're 12 years old, they put a Huntington rod on your spine. These are the things that are no longer there, and that gives people, as opposed to what Koch is saying, the freedom. What hurts the most is that nobody, when Koch started running the commercials that told young people not to be insured, not to go on to get their Obamacare, whatever insurance policies, no major reporting agency came out and said, okay, Charles Koch, you want these young people not to get this insurance. If they break their legs tomorrow, will you pay for it? See what I'm talking about, John? Greg?
Yeah,
will
absolutely.
They pay for it?
Absolutely.
So, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just totally agree with you, and I just hope people can kind of see through this ambiguity of language, because everybody wants to be free and everybody wants to be liberated, but what does that truly mean in political circumstances when it can mean several different things? Here's another sentence. It says, this is what happens when elected officials believe that people's lives are better run by politicians and regulations than by people themselves. Now, this is going back to what I said earlier. I mean, we elect politicians, you know, and it's really unfortunate. It's unfortunate that here in Texas we elect politicians, you know, who don't want to give treatment who don't want to expand Medicaid, and you know, millions of people are going to die because of that. In fact, I saw one thing. They had handgun deaths, and the estimate of people that are going to die from not having Medicaid expansion was actually higher than the amount of people dying from handgun deaths in Texas. So, I mean, that just shows you, you know, how sad that is. And as far as, you know, as far as regulations, of course he doesn't want regulations. He talks about the EPA, but all the money he pours into people, they want to eliminate the EPA. I mean, how many Republican politicians want to eliminate the EPA? Almost all of them. I mean, that's what they constantly talk about, you know, is eliminating the EPA and other organizations that really help people. I mean, they want to cut the safety net, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps. I mean, this is a crusade to them. This is a big game to them. This is a quest for power. And
sorry, John.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I mean, this is a quest for power, and this is a game. I mean, I do disagree with Greg a little bit. I think their holy grail is still taxes, and you know, to them, there's nothing more important than keeping their tax rates low. And I mean, that's why, you know, the Ryan budget, the highest tax rate is at 25%. And I mean, that is their holy grail. And I mean, they were, despite the fact that they've made so much money, the 1% has made so much money, you know, since the recession has come into place. I mean, nobody else has made money. Everybody else has fallen behind. Yet the 1% has made money because everything is so rigged. Yet, I mean, look at the stock market. It was down to 6,800 in March of 2009. Now Look where it's at. It's doubled, and
more than doubled.
So, I mean, yeah, that's right, more than doubled. It's like 120%, and so, you know, he doesn't even appreciate that. He wants more greed. He's not even satisfied with that. I mean, it's really incredibly sad that our society accepts this, and I think Harry Reid is a brilliant plan. Just like Obama's team exposed Romney as a plutocrat, and that had a significant
effect on the election.
Absolutely, and so I think it's a great strategy, and I hope it has fruition. You know.
Well, you know, I've been telling a lot of folks, okay, and assuming things maintain the trajectory that it's going, I really think there are several people on the left playing possum. I don't, you know, right now the conventional wisdom is this year is going to be a blowout, killed year for Democrats, for anybody on the left. It's going to be a losing year. I'll tell you something. I have this feeling that people are starting to slowly wake up. I mean, we saw that in some elections in Massachusetts earlier this week, where a young Democrat won in a Republican district that usually give margins of victory by 20% or so. That had no major overtones of Obamacare or anything like that. So I really have a feeling that we are going to start seeing this. In an earlier piece, I had written that income inequality was a bad message. A lot of people gave me some pushback on that, saying, no, we should do it. Don't underestimate Americans. I am starting to believe that I am actually wrong about that, and that income inequality, even the specific words, actually are starting to play. I wanted to do some more personalization than specifically saying the word, but it seems like people are starting to understand that word, that phrase, and are starting to act accordingly. the turnaround in the support for the Affordable Care Act, people starting to realize that, wait a minute, what's in this for me? It's really starting to make a difference. So I don't think things will be bad, as folks are saying, in November, but we'll see where the trajectory go. I think my friend wants to get in. What's your name, sir?
Oh, me?
620? Jack. Okay,
yeah, Jack Golding.
Come on in, Jack. Add to the discussion, Jack.
Okay. Now, we're talking about the Koch brothers. They're most dangerous elements. I think the more exposure you're giving them, Harry Reid has done a brave thing and a smart thing in doing so. So as people get to know about them, they will shun them. The average person does not want to give thousands of dollars.
Exactly.
You got me? Yeah.
Yes, I got you. I tell you what, Jack, it's interesting because they did a poll a few weeks ago, and they found out that very few people actually know who the Koch brothers are. And the interesting thing is they have such an influence on they not only have, but they've had such an influence on our body politic for several decades now. But people just don't realize it. They don't realize that the formative years of the Tea Party was a Koch doing. In fact, I printed a blog a few months ago where it showed that, whereas everybody looked at the beginning of the Tea Party as to when that guy went out in the stock market and addressed the president and said, are you listening? What's the name of that guy, John? John, what's the name of that guy?
Rick Santelli.
Rick Santelli. That wasn't the beginning. We have documents now that show the Tea Party started way before that. But that was the right moment for them to simply come out.
Talking about on the John Birch Society?
That is
a shoot-off from the John Birch Society, and you have to go way back to the days when I was in college, when McCarthyism was in vogue.
Right.
That is, people just have to be educated to get aware of the shine the spotlight on them. And Harry Reid is doing it right. And I think the whole thing about the Supreme Court thing. Now, I'm for term limits for the Supreme Court.
Well, I tell you what, I feel. Let me tell you what I'm for with respect to the Supreme Court. It behooves me, and I don't know what you think, both Greg and John, but
I think power. It's reduced down to power. And,
yes, sir. But
power
hear
is
me
bad.
out. Yes.
In about 99% of the cases, power is bad.
Yes, but let me ask you something, Jack. Jack, listen to what I'm going to ask. My biggest concern with our structure, and this is constitutional, so I can't really say too much as far as, well, it's wrong or whatever. But I think that was one of the gravest mistakes that we have, and that is, given the type of autonomy, we talk about checks and balances in this country, but I think it gives an overwhelmingly amount of power to the Supreme. Those nine men have too much power over the triage, the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. But I really like to hear John's input on that. What do you think about that, John?
Oh, it's hard to say, really. I mean, the court. I mean, the reason the Roberts 5 is so historically awful is it's like you were saying before a few months ago when you were talking about the Powell Doctrine. I mean, this is the ramification of the Powell Doctrine. I mean, thinking about everything in a political way, a real political way, as opposed to a judicial way. Now, Robert said, I'm just like an umpire to call balls and strikes, and yet everything he has done is to support big business and support plutocrats and to go against the common man. And so, I mean, that's his legacy. I mean, I think that the only reason they let it, he personally let Obamacare, pass.
Go through.
Right, go through is because he was afraid of his legacy. He knew that was a bridge too far. He knew that he would just be absolutely vilified as a partisan. But everything else he has done is so incredibly partisan. So, I don't know about it. A lot of it, I mean, we just have to look at elections. I mean, we have to face the facts that besides the Clinton years, now it's been 5 years of that Obama's been in office. We had 20 years of Republican presidents.
Right.
The 8 years of Reagan, 4 years of Bush, Herbert Walker, and then obviously W for 8. And so, I mean, elections are incredibly important. And,
right.
And so, I mean, that's why I think a lot of people are clinging to Hillary Clinton, because even though they may not agree with her completely, they know that, she's going to probably appoint Supreme Court justices that could possibly overturn Citizens United. I think it's actually fairly probable, because the other four.
I'm concerned though about Hillary, and like I said, if Hillary were to run, yes, there's a good likelihood, not a good likelihood, I would support, but I'm so scared that this coronation is too absolute, if you will. I think.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I agree. It's too, it is early, but I mean, if Bernie Sanders runs in the Democratic primary, I'm there. I'm supporting him full-heartedly. And if Elizabeth Warren runs in the primary, I'm supporting her. I like Martin O'Malley.
Right.
But I mean, realistically, you look at the numbers, and even people who consider themselves very liberal, really support her, and people want a winner. They want somebody, they remember the Clinton era, and the Clinton era was much more prosperous time, even more so than the Reagan era. There was a great chart that Meteor Blades Tim Lang put up on Daily Kos talking about growth in the Clinton era, and it was really incredible.
Oh, I know that. I mean, that was, I wrote about that a whole lot, because nobody, and this is where we talk about the media as well, John. Everybody gives Reagan that great kudos for the economic recovery during his time, without realizing that it really wasn't, we had a recovery, but we had a recovery at what I always called at the expense of our budget, at the expense of our deficits. I mean, he's the one who really began these explosive deficits. So, I mean, let's be frank. His recovery was done on credit. I mean, his recovery was done on credit. I think in the latter years of under Clinton, what we had was, had we maintained the tax rates, had we maintained all these different policies, we probably would still be back into deficits today, but they would have been very, very manageable. And a lot of the extraction that is occurring from bondholders who are holding the debt of the United States would be back into the economy in the hands of the middle class, as opposed to being held by those who hold United States bonds. Think about that. And that is something that folks need to think about. Whenever we deficit spend to go by, I mean, I don't remember what our interest bill is right now, but think about this, folks. When we are paying taxes right now, right off the bat, several $100 billion go out of the Treasury into the pockets of the wealthy folks that own U.S. bonds. Think about that. Doesn't go to health care, doesn't go to build roads. Say that again, Jack.
That's interest on the debt. That's $400 billion a year.
And growing.
Yeah. And
well, it's actually not growing. It's actually being. Go ahead, Jack.
I think I heard that the deficit is shrinking.
No, the deficit is shrinking.
That's true.
No, absolutely. Let's qualify that. This is important because I heard what you just said, John. This is important. The deficit is going down. The cumulative debt is going up. Okay, so yes, it is true that President Obama has dropped the deficit faster than any other president. That is absolutely true. But because we continue in deficits, the debt is cumulative. And in having a cumulative debt with an interest rate that is stable. Wait, let me finish, Jack. If you have
the
a growing...
It's like $70 trillion or something like that. So, $56 trillion, I heard, liability.
Yeah, that's more than just a debt. That involves a lot more.
That's not enough to discuss what they're going to do with the post office, and that should affect people in red states, especially rural areas, if they don't have a service.
Right. That's a different subject.
That has not been discussed.
Jack, you're correct. That's a different subject, but you're correct. And I think, let me just reiterate what you just said because it's important for people to know. Right now, the post office is under attack. Right now, many want to close a lot of, cut down the amount of time that post offices are open in the rural areas. They also want to not only close the post office, but they want to actually close units. This disproportionately affects the people in rural areas. Disproportionately affects them because there are a lot of these places that UPS isn't as frequent, FedEx isn't as frequent. There are a lot of places that this is where they get their governmental papers and much more. So this austerity being imposed on the post office, which, by the way, does not get any funding from the United States government, but is run by the United States government, will affect the people who sent their representatives there to protect them in the first place. But anyhow, that's your piece, Jack. It is very true. Just not what we're talking about right now. But anyhow, so Greg, you have anything else to add about our Koch friends?
Okay.
No, Jack. I'm talking to Greg. Go ahead, Greg.
I just wanted to echo what John was saying earlier about the choice of vocabulary in words like freedom and liberty. I think in a lot of ways the conservative side of the aisle has co-opted those words. They've turned them into dog whistles. Koch is doing the exact same thing, pandering to his audience, obviously, at the Wall Street Journal. And regular Americans just seem to have completely bought into the myth, although I'd like to be optimistic with you, Egberto, and think that it's changing. But the myth that the government is the problem. Everything that, and I hate to do this because I do it a lot, but a lot of the problems I see in our society today can be directly traced back to the Reagan administration and their policies and their take on the role that government plays in a civil society. These people that we send to our state capitals and to Washington, D.C. are, after all, supposed to be us. They represent us. We send them there to do that sort of job. They are not the problem. They are supposed to be representing us in balancing out the forces of corporations and private enterprise. Because given a free rein, we have seen what corporations and free enterprise will do. It's how the system works. Anybody who spends 5 minutes in business gets it. The financial statement does not have a conscience. It's not supposed to. The conscience, the balance, needs to come from us as citizens and as consumers and from our representatives in government. We see the outcome of 30 years of deregulation and trickle-down economic theory. It is an abject failure. If it worked, Egberto, we would be swimming in opportunities. There would not be a wealth gap. There would not be an unemployment rate that continues to bounce along the bottom. It would be an incredible, near utopian existence. But that's not the case, and the reason is simple. Because those who have the most continue to exercise and force their ideology on the rest of us through the money that influences policy in Washington, D.C., and after 30 or 35 years of it, we need to start waking up to the fact that the balance has been lost, and it's going to be up to us to get it back, because it's not going to happen by itself.
Exactly. I tell you what, I want to reiterate something that you said about government. Government is, in fact, we the people, and you have to realize, folks that are listening to this, there was a concerted effort to detach you, the individual, from the government, okay? The reality is you are the government, and whenever they say government never does anything right, they're actually saying that you are not doing anything right. What Greg is saying and implying is important. We are the government, and what we have to do is take back control of the government and not allow these folks to create that schism, that detachment from the government at all. Now, I only have 4 minutes, so I'm going to ask Jack to give me 15 seconds closing. Jack, give me a 15-second closer.
All right.
Come on, Jack.
Okay. Number one. Supreme Court justices should have term limits. And number two, let's investigate these Koch Brothers and these other organizations need to be exposed to the rotten plutocrats that they are.
Well, Jack, I'm going to let you end on that statement because that was very solid. I appreciate you calling in, Jack, and remember, keep calling us on Saturdays. Greg, give me your closer.
Don't stay quiet. Don't stay silent. Do not let people get away with taking over the dialogue and throwing around, words like freedom and liberty without challenge.
Thank you, Greg. John, close her out.
Yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about the fact that as a human being, you can tune out commercials. I mean, that's one way that money will not affect you. In fact, I'm a little bit of an activist, and a lot of political campaigns call me and try to get me to vote for their candidates. And when they start giving negative information about their opponents, I said, I don't want to hear it. I want to do my own information. I want to go on the net and get a real idea of what the politicians say. I don't want to hear commercials, and I try to block commercials out of my life as much as I can, do my own research, make my own decisions, and if we do that, money and speech won't have as much as an impact. Now, we've got to fight it 100% and go against it, and that's one thing Jonathan Soros that is a little bit of a different. Jonathan Soros, he gives a lot of money, but he, with the intention, changed Citizens United. So, I mean, you can say it's hypocritical, but, I mean, his goal is to get money out, and that was part of the Democratic platform in 2012, and it was something that the Republican platform was completely against. They were talking about the bogus First Amendment issues. So,
let it go.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, John, as usual. Folks, first of all, thank you for spending your Saturday, 1 hour with your Saturday with me. Remember, you be the media. That's what we are building together. We inform each other, and we inform those that need to be informed. Please remember that we have several shows. On Sundays, we have Progressive Politics, Tennessee Style with Bud Fields. On Mondays at 10 p.m., we have Press 1 for Democracy with Dan Aronson. On Thursdays, we have at 3 p.m. Eastern, Lunch with Loudon. On Saturdays, of course, you're here with me at 1 p.m., Politics Done Right. And now you can also get another version of Politics Done Right on KPFT on KPFT FM 90.1 in Houston and surrounding areas, or you can stream it wherever you are at kpft.org. As Janine would say, folks, have a wonderful Saturday and coffee party on.